Drayton Manor is a park that has been moving away from thrills towards the family market in recent years with a dedicated Thomas land. But which rides are worth keeping and which ones should we scrap? Let's find out, shall we? We're going to start with one of the newest-ish attractions. And I say that because it's kind of a refit of an existing one, and that is the Wave. Now, formerly known as Shockwave, this was the UK's only standing coaster, and I wasn't a fan of it when it was a standing coaster. In fact, there was rumours of it getting a sit-down train for some time, and I kept saying, please do it. Well, they did. They did it last year. They put on a new seated train, and it's made a huge difference. This is definitely a much better experience. The one problem, and this applies to most of this park, to be fair, not this one attraction, is operations. It is horrific at how slow the trains are dispatched, or train, I should say, because they only purchased one. So unless they bought a new one in the closed season or intend to buy one in the near future, this thing is kind of crippled by the fact that it's only got a single train that takes forever to load. Nonetheless, the actual ride experience itself is pretty good, and it is definitely one that I would keep. Just outside the Wave is their gyro swing, known as Maelstrom, and I'm a huge fan of this, to be fair. It's a really good implementation of one. It's not the giant model. There's obviously rumours that Blackpool is going to get a gyro swing, and certainly if they do, everyone is hoping it's the larger version, which we don't have in the UK. That said, this particular one, as I say, is very good, and I do enjoy going on it, so it's another ride that I would keep. Now, in the same area as those two, there is a water ride that is pretty much guaranteed to get you absolutely soaked, and that is Stormforce 10. Now, this is it's a fairly good boat ride in terms of it does exactly what it says on the tin. You know, it's very wet. It's a bit like Valhalla, right? It's not one where you might come off dry. You're going to get absolutely soaked on this thing, and I think I've said this about a lot of water rides in the UK. We're not exactly renowned for the best weather. Sure, in the summer it can be okay for periods of it, but you have so many cold days, wet days. It's not an all year round attraction. I mean, the park isn't open all year round, but even at the ends of the season, it's not great. So it is fantastic for what it is. It's not a ride I typically go on when I visit Drayton, because I don't really want to get drenched. So for me, I'm going to put this one in the take it or leave it pile. And then their other water ride that they have there is their Rapids. And to be honest, these are seriously underwhelming. I mean, when they did all that sort of refresh in that area, they painted it up and they made it all look fantastic. I kind of thought that the Rapids were going to get some TLC. They didn't really. The last few times I've been on it, a lot of the kind of water effects weren't running. There's not really much to see on the way around. There's not like any props or anything, and it's not got any drops. There's not much there's not many areas that you get wet. Now, I know I've just criticised Stormforce 10 for the fact that you get too wet, but when you go on Rapids, you kind of at least expect to have a risk of getting splashed. Not really on this one, so let's grab them. I'm going to jump over to the Viking area and go around the rides over there, and the first one I'm going to talk about is Thor. It's just a roller disco, and not a particularly good one. The only roller disco that I have enjoyed the cycle of, and even lately that has changed, is the one in Blackpool, Avatar Airbender. It used to be fantastic. It seems to have got a lot weaker lately, but most of the other roller discos, they just don't do it, especially the ones with a hump in the middle. They're just, So I'm gonna put this one in the take it or leave it pile. And this next one might be a little bit of a surprise to some, because Loki, the Zamperla Nebula, see, this is an interesting ride. Off-ride, this is a visual spectacle. The way that it kind of interacts with itself and looks like there's near-miss elements when there aren't. I mean, it's very cleverly orchestrated to look spectacular. It's okay when you're on it. I mean, it's more forceful than you would expect for something like that, but it's also really poor from a throughput point of view, right? I mean, it's kind of a flaw of the model itself, where, you know, they load half of it, and then they flip you up to the other side, and then they load the other half of it, and then you get a short cycle, and it's just not great from a throughput point of view. So, I mean, it does look fantastic off-ride. It's a little more forceful than you'd anticipate. I wouldn't get rid of it. I mean, it's a brand new ride, but I had to put this one also in that take it or leave it pile. And then the last ride in that area that I'm going to talk about, because there's a couple of little ones, is Jormungandr. And now this is just a re-theme of the Buffalo coaster that was there, and it's a powered coaster. It's not forceful in any shape or form. There's no big drops. There's definitely no inversions. It's a very tame experience. It builds up a little bit of speed when it goes in the helix over the water. I'm going to put it down as keep. I'm going to be generous to this one and say keep, because I did almost put it in the take it or leave it pile, because it's definitely not aimed at me. But I think as a kind of first coaster for some kids, I think it does pretty well. So, and it's actually, let me know in the comments. I have memories when this was the Buffalo coaster that it used to be a 2-lap special. It definitely isn't now, it's single lap. Now either I'm making that up or they changed that when they switched it to Jormungandr. But as I say, I'm going to be generous on this one and keep it. But yeah, I mean, it's not really aimed at me. And the next one is their Boomerang, and that is Accelerator. Now, this is a weird ride at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the season starts this year, because obviously they've rethemed that whole area of the park into this kind of Wild West section, and then Accelerator was this kind of car ride. Now they did start to do some stuff. There was a new sign put up, there was some painting on the outside, but the queue line was still the old Accelerator with cars and a garage and all that kind of thing, and it just didn't really feel like it fits in. Considering how much they did to that whole area to upgrade it, it's kind of odd that they left this one. So I'm curious to see if that will change. I mean, it's just a Boomerang, it's nothing special. Again, I'm not the target audience, and I know I was just generous towards Jormungandr, but I am going to put this one in the take it or leave it pile. Now their headline attraction is just next to that, and that is Gold Rush. Now sadly I've not been on this yet, because the last time I visited the park was about 3 or 4 weeks prior to it launching. I was hoping to time it nicely. I did not, so I have not experienced this. However, I have heard only positive things, and it's an Intamin ride, let's be fair. It's very rare that Intamin kind of make a false step, so I'm going to assume that this is a keep. I'd be very surprised if I get on it and change my mind, because it's a really unique ride, right? It's a multi-dimensional coaster that has 2 different cycles. So, you know, you can go out some sections backwards, some sections forwards. Pretty sure it's later in the day they switch the cycle. I think to start with it was sort of randomized, and now they've kind of said 1 cycle in the morning, 1 cycle in the afternoon, to give people the opportunity to get both. Because random's great, but you know, if you keep getting the same cycle, that's frustrating. So I'm keen to get on this one. I don't currently have any plans to do Drayton this year, but if I'm going past, I might pop in. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Gold Rush, and if I'm wrong to say keep, because I'm just making an assumption here. Now the next one is their 4D cinema, Falls Theatre. Now this has now got a Roadrunner video on it, which is kind of good to see, because let's be fair, nowadays everything on TV is so toned down that you don't see that cartoon violence anymore, which I kind of miss. I'm that generation that I had the cartoons beating each other up, and it didn't harm me in any shape or form. I think it's great the choice of video that they put in there. It was okay. I've seen it once. The one thing, and I think it's more of a criticism for 3D cinemas in general, is that the seats are really slow to move and kind of quite jerky. I think if they were a bit more fluid and more dynamic, then it would add to it. That said, I'm going to put it in the take it or leave it pile. It's definitely not an attraction that when I'm there I'm like, oh, I must go do the 4D cinema. But it's a good one. It's, you know, in terms of the film choice that they've put in, as I say, if they could fix those seats, or if there was newer seats, because I think that's just a fundamental flaw of 3D cinemas. But let's put it take it or leave it. Now, one of the flat rides that is there kind of, I would say, straddles that family thrill, and that is Air Race. Now, you probably know it. It's the one where there's 4 seats in a plane, and it does inversions effectively. It just loops round and round and round. I think it's fantastic. I am a huge fan of it, because it is one of the more intense rides in the park, and I just love being upside down. So definitely one that I'm going to keep. Now, a ride that I'm not as much of a fan of, and it kind of feels really out of place, and I'm curious if there's a plan for this. A little bit like Accelerator, it just seems to have been sort of left, and that is the Haunting. Now, this is kind of a madhouse effectively, you know, it's got the whole upside down room. I don't have any vivid memories of this. I've done it a handful of times. The only memory I've got is my daughter leaving halfway through because she was terrified of it, and I just thought it was hilarious. It's okay. It's not the best. I just feel like it's out of place. Like, I don't think, because of where it is in that sort of sheriff place, maybe this is just a lack of imagination on my part, I can't see a way that they can retheme that to fit in better in that area. So for me, I feel that they can't pick it up and move it to another part of the park, so I think they should scrap it. Now, there's a ride that does fit well in that area, and I'm still not a huge fan of it, and that is Sheriff Showdown. Now obviously, literally fits into that area perfectly, and it's just a shooter game. It's probably the slowest moving shooter that I've ever been on. It is not difficult to get a good score, and well, if you've been on it, you got a bonus! That is just literally all it says. So I think it needs to go. I would also scrap this one and put something better in its place. And just up from that is blasting barrels. Now this used to be, I think this was drunken barrels before. It used to have the kind of Oktoberfest thing and the sort of German woman and the Steins and stuff. I mean, they've done an alright job of trying to retheme this. They've not done a huge amount, they've just put some dynamite in there and it's still barrels. It's quite a good one though. It's a reasonably intense variant of that ride, the sort of tilts and lifts and stuff. So yeah, I mean, as far as flat rides go, I'd keep it. There's another flat ride that is in the park that I am also quite a big fan of, and that is their pirate ship, known as the Bounty Pirate Ship. It's actually one of the better ones. It's nice that it's actually beside water as well, which is sort of rare. They're usually sort of landlocked in a park. This one is right next to the water, and it's a pretty good pirate ship, as I said. So there's no surprises that I would keep this one. I think I've said this in other videos, a lot of parks are lacking that flat ride offering. I know some people aren't a huge fan of flat rides, but they do have a purpose, right? They do soak up the crowds. So it's always nice to see them, and this is a good one. And then there's another flat ride that I'm also a fan of, and that is the Wave Swinger. Now, I mean, this is literally just a set of swings that go around and, you know, nothing particularly fancy about it. Still quite enjoyable. I still do enjoy it. There are other parks that have kind of water effects to go with this that either do or don't get you wet. This is just the swings, but nonetheless, for as simple as it is, I enjoy this one, and it is one that I would keep. Now, I'm not going to dive into the Thomas the Tank area because, well, there's many rides that my adult ass doesn't fit on, so it'd be a bit stupid for me to try and comment on them. But there is one ride that I am going to touch on, and that is Troublesome Trucks. Now, it's a coaster, it's a credit, so obviously I've been on it a few times. It's a weird ride. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, I know that it's obviously not designed for adults, but typically adults will go on with their children. The seats aren't the most comfortable. It's a bit kind of janky around the corners. It is a 2-lap special, which is okay. Bizarrely, last time I went on it, I was told to take my shades off in case they fell off. I mean, I'm not being funny, but it's not exactly forceful. It barely goes over like 5-10 miles an hour. So I don't understand why I was told to take my glasses off. So that was kind of frustrating. But it's weird because I've been just earlier saying I'm complimenting Intamin and it's rare that Intamin do a bad ride. I'm pretty sure Intamin made this, and it is not their finest work. So I'm going to put this one in the take it or leave it pile. Never like to say scrap a coaster unless it's really, really bad, but it's definitely not the best Intamin out there. And well, as I say, again, I'm not the target audience, but we'll put it in that take it or leave it pile. Now, if I've done the sums right, there are more keep than the others, although it is kind of close. There's quite a lot of stuff in there that I've put in the take it or leave it pile, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this because I'm sure there'll be some rides you agree with and others that you disagree with. Obviously, as I say, the park has been moving away from thrill towards sort of family orientation in recent years. They got rid of things like Apocalypse, that thing that used to go upside down, that I can't remember the name of, and I never got on. So, you know, for me personally, my sort of thrill demographic, the park is moving away from catering towards me, but I am curious what your thoughts are on the current ride lineup and yeah, which ones you agree with. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, hit subscribe and make this number go up. I've been Chris, you've been watching Coaster Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Adios!